Great. Well, thank everybody for joining us. We are going to start our conversation for the Hokie Shuffle with our Allyship, Advocacy, and Service organizations who are with us today. And we're going to start with a round of introductions. I will go ahead and introduce myself as the facilitator. My name is Morgan Snowatsky. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Student Organization Development and Student Engagement in Campus Life, which gives me the great pleasure of overseeing all of our now over 800, because we have new orgs, over 800 student organizations in the community. So I'm going to ask each of y'all if you want to go around and introduce yourself with the same information, and then your organization, and tell us, what do you feel like allyship or service mean to you, and what are those things, kind of how are those connected? And I'll put that in the chat so y'all have it.
Okay, well, I can go first. I'm Maddie Martin. I am a senior majoring in multimedia journalism. I'm representing Chi Delta Alpha. I'm currently the president of the organization, and we are a service sorority on campus. And I think allyship and service, thinking about that, especially this semester, is, we haven't been able to do all the same service projects we've always done, and we all have our favorites. And I think trying to reframe service as genuinely helping and not just doing something we enjoy too, because it's easy to go on and help someone the way you think they need to be helped, but it really takes listening and learning how they actually need to be helped, and they will communicate that. So I think just asking, but I think that allyship goes hand in hand with that. You're not really being an ally if you're just going in and doing what you think needs to be done, without listening to the community members and doing what they want to be done, if that makes sense.
All right, well, I can go next. My name is Abigail Rittenauer. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a senior with a double major in criminology and sociology, and I am the president of the Students Against Child Marriage organization. And we do this because child marriage is still illegal in 46 states in America, so we really drive to kind of advocate against this issue. And to me, allyship is when a group of people get together that have kind of a similar passion and get together to kind of fight for justice against a wrong or something that they see as a social problem. And so kind of getting together and fighting for that cause. And I believe it is connected to service, because by getting together and using voice, I believe is a service in itself, raising awareness about an issue and going further and fighting against that and making forward movement like that, to me is service, because it is doing something with meaning and passion.
My name is Shauna King. I'm a junior majoring in international public policy and public relations. And I'm president of Students for Racial Justice, and I'm also in the Coalition for Refugee Resettlement. And for me, I think allyship and service, like the two of them, really mean to always center the needs of whatever community or issue you're trying to address. I think always keeping the people who benefit from your actions in mind through whatever you're doing is important. And one thing I also wanted to just briefly bring up is that I think there is some controversy surrounding the use of the word ally. Some people don't like the use of that word because they feel like it's kind of like giving yourself a title that you don't necessarily, like you may not have earned, or implies more involvement than you have. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's why actually this conversation and this grouping of organizations right under the concept of allyship and service in the same space is really helpful as we think about them kind of on the spectrum of different ways that you show up for a community, I also think so much about like Virginia Tech and like, as I like to lovingly refer to, oopros culture, that I'm excited about the ways that y'all might talk about the work that you do and the lessons that you've learned through being involved. I'm going to put the rest of the questions in there and we'll kind of go through them one at a time. And I'm really bad at staying on like a set thing, so I might jump around in order a little bit. But I'd like to start by talking a little bit more broadly too about involvement. And then we'll kind of get into some more stuff. And I want you to interweave your understanding of things like allyship and service and advocacy throughout this kind of conversation. But what is getting involved done for your college experience? And maybe how does that even connect to your kind of developing sense of what service, advocacy, and allyship look like? And if we maybe want to start, we can continue going in the same order if that feels helpful, or we can jump around, whatever.
I can go first. Yeah, that's fine with me. My involvement has had a tremendous impact on my college experience. I think it's made my college experience because I'm not just a Virginia Tech student, I'm a community member. Because, you know, my organization, we serve the entire New River Valley. So we've done projects in Roanoke. We work with a lot of the schools. So I'm constantly interacting with teachers, with families, Special Olympics. We do a lot of with that with them. So it's done everything. I mean, because I knew coming here, I didn't want to just be a Virginia Tech student. My dad's from around here and he loves this community. And that's part of the reason why I came here. I was like, all right, let's check it out, see what it's all about. But when I got here, you know, it was easy to just stay on campus, just to be a Virginia Tech student. But by getting involved, it helped me become a community member, and then with that comes connections, comes with, you know, it just leading me down a path. Like my career path changed because of this involvement. So I think that it just opens so many more doors. It broadens that experience a lot.
Well, I kind of have a different experience, which I think is interesting. I really was not involved in clubs. I came here telling myself I was going to, and I didn't for most of freshman year, sophomore year, but I've always been really interested, or not interested, but I've always advocated against child marriage because it is a personal thing. It happened to my mother when she was a child. So it's always been a big part of my life, and being a sociology major, talking to so many professors about it and seeing really just how many people didn't know this was an issue. And so in founding the organization, it's really taught me how being kind of how Maddie said, not just being a student, being something more, being a leader and making change while being here and being able to engage other people in this and really kind of making it, I don't want to say making it bigger because going to college is still just a big thing, but for me personally, it's felt really powerful being able to take my college experience and add this here and being able to see that I can do something while I'm here. And for me, that's really powerful and has been really important. Also learning how to be a leader as well, because I don't have too much leadership experience before I came to college. And now I'm learning how to do this and how to plan activities. And that's helped me with time management as well, which is a really big, important thing.
So for me, I think I might talk a bit more about my involvement with Coalition for Refugee Resettlement, just because my organization is really new, so it hasn't really like impacted my college experience too much so far. But I've been in Coalition since my freshman year, and now I'm vice president. And kind of similar to Maddie, I feel like it really helped me get involved in the like New River Valley community because we do tutoring for like ELL learners. And so I feel like I got a better understanding of this area and like the people who are local to here. Because another thing too for me is I'm not from Virginia at all. I'm from Massachusetts. So like Appalachian culture, and just everything here is somewhat new and different to me. So that's been interesting. I feel like I've also it also has kind of like influenced my career path in a sense. I've always been interested, I think, in like immigrant and refugee issues, and then to get the opportunity to actually directly be working with people who are from those communities and impacted by different policies and things. It's like a whole different experience to really see those people like and building relationships with them too has been really special.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all, for sharing. Yeah, I think there's so many potential benefits of getting involved, and I think that service and activism and things like that, I think that you all kind of spoke about this empowerment to feel connected to the place that you're really going to school and feel embedded in the community. And I think that's always something that I like as like a staff member, like I'm like, I just want people, like I want students to also feel like this is their place. And I think even during COVID, that's been particularly salient because there was some kind of funky dynamics at the beginning of COVID where people were like, get them out of here. It's like the students are part of the community and can be embedded here too. And so I think it's really meaningful to take active steps to do that, because it can also, I think that maybe it was Abby or Maddie that mentioned like it's easy to just like stay on campus because it kind of everything's there, especially if you live on campus or if you're just taking the bus in. And so I appreciate that y'all kind of brought attention to that. Be curious to hear y'all talk a little bit about what are maybe some of the struggles that have come with involvement, either the process of getting involved or once you were involved. What are some of the broader kind of challenges to involvement, and then even your specific type of involvement? Maybe would have been some challenges, barriers, or roadblocks.
Yeah, so when I first got here, I kind of just joined all of the similar things that I'd done in high school. Because I knew coming in, like I joined a living learning program right off of the bat because I knew I needed a community and I knew I needed an adult to tell me how to do this. So that's kind of was my base. But then I realized, like, as I joined all of these things, and then it wasn't like it was in high school. It wasn't giving me that same feeling of purpose. It wasn't giving me the same type of community that I had found before. So that was something that was really hard because I, committed to all of these things. But then having to recognize like these things aren't for me, I need to pursue something else and say no, was really hard because that is not, I am one to, I commit to this and it is 100% and I will just not disappoint. Responsibility is my second strength. So I just do not like say no ever, which is not a good thing. So that was the, that was something I struggled with a lot in terms of getting involved. And then, but eventually, I did find that community that I was looking for, especially in XDA. But then as a leader, I think something that I've really struggled with is, just, I guess, distinguishing between what's a big deal, what's urgent, what can be put on the back burner, what can wait, and then dealing with a leadership member or leadership chair who, it concerns their event directly and it's urgent to them, but in the big picture, it has to wait. I think that that's something that I've struggled with, just communicating that to people. And there was another thing I lost it. But I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I've struggled with, especially in this role as a leader, but also I remembered it. But also in like my current role, I hold a lot of the personal information and a lot of the emotions and struggles of our members that I obviously can't share with others. So sometimes that's a lot. Just figuring out how to go about that and like handle that information while also helping them and checking in on them. So that's been that is not something that I've ever had to deal with in a leadership position. So that's been something that I've been struggling with this year in particular.
So for me, getting involved was kind of an interesting thing. Like I said earlier, I didn't really get involved in clubs as much as I planned to, wanted to. I found it really hard to, I'm so sorry, my cat's making noise, but I find it really hard to manage my time. I've worked full time since I've been in college, and I think that really held me back because I felt like I couldn't do more. And I said, well, this is what I can do, even though I had time. And it was kind of an anxiety I felt that held me back. Um, Anxiety being perceived maybe, but I worried about that because I've known this has been a big issue. I Most everyone I know, my professors, my coworkers, they all know I talk about child marriage a lot. And a lot of times people said, start a club, we don't have one. And I was like, well, would anyone care, would anyone be interested? And I think it took me way too long to realize, even if it's just, 5 people, that's 5 people who are all coming together on the same passion and want to be involved in this. And that's a big thing. Every person is joining this, and that's a big thing. And so it took me a long time, but I did get involved and I got it started. And I'm so thankful I did. And as a senior, I'm taking my last year and I'm just really putting it all into this. And that's made me really proud. But one thing I have seen as a new organization, the thing I have struggled with the most as a leader, I think, is outreach as well as planning with the current world situation and following CDC guidelines and being safe. It's kind of hard to plan events. I found, at least with advocacy groups, because for me, that a lot of that means going out, doing things, talking to people and interacting, and we can't really do that anymore. And so it's been kind of difficult for me to try and plan events that get people involved and have outreach and advocate for this issue while also being safe. Um, but that's something we've learned to overcome. I'm planning virtual events, and we're really coming together as a group within the organization. I always ask everyone else for ideas, and they give great ideas, and so we're actually planning a lot more, and we definitely are planning bigger events for next semester. So I'm very excited for that.
So for me, in terms of involvement, I kind of like Maddie, I joined a LLC. When I first came here, I was in Mosaico in the Spanish house. And then I stayed in that for 2 years. So I was also in it last year and I was a leader there for the Spanish house programming. And I felt like that was really important for me to build like friendships and make connections with people at Virginia Tech. Especially as an out-of-state student, I didn't know anyone going in, and I feel like organizations are like the main place where I met some of my closest friends. And then in terms of like struggles as a leader, I feel like my leadership experience last year as like Spanish house leader was a lot smoother than trying to create an organization, like trying to create students for racial justice. I kind of had some of the same challenges as Abigail. I had, I was somewhat more nervous about like my confidence in my leadership abilities. I think because of the subject matter, because it's so sensitive, and I didn't want to handle it in the wrong way or misrepresent a certain group or give out misinformation. Those were some of my concerns. And then also wondering, will people judge me, especially based off of my identity? Since I'm part Asian, but mainly white, and I come across as white to people, so I know that people might question why a white person is trying to start this organization. And that was things that I was concerned about, even though like I know that I have a genuine interest in seeing racial justice measures happen in a variety of different ways. And then also outreach has been a major one, just trying to get people to actually come to my meetings, actually want to do actions, call officials, send out emails. That's probably some of the biggest challenges that I've had.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. And I think that um, those answers represented a good balance between like there are things that like are internal that are hard about getting involved and leading an organization, right? If it's like kind of our own sense of confidence or our perception of other people's like interest in being invested, or our sense of responsibility and feeling like we should be doing X, Y, or Z instead of kind of like what we want to do. But also these kind of external factors that sometimes feel out of our control, like so trying to get other people engaged because like, I mean, the pandemic is the ultimate out of our control. But some of these things are still, I mean, common struggles of orgs across that. And I think that it would be helpful to hear folks talk a little bit, thinking about the fact that like, right, like if I'm a student looking to get involved, I'm excited about getting engaged in organizations, what are some of the lessons that I would maybe learn by either facing some of those internal struggles, challenges, or some of those external kind of things that are challenging to navigate? So what is an important lesson that you have learned by being involved in a student organization?
I think a concept I had never ever thought about until very recently was putting like my well-being on the top of my priority list. Because I make to-do lists and priority lists all the time, and myself was never even on it. And that is a lesson that I learned, and not like be selfish, but just knowing that I can't lead, I can't serve my community unless I'm taking care of myself. Because ultimately, like, my well-being needs to be met. Like, it needs to be like, I just need to be well in order to do in order to function and do what I need to do. But that was a concept I didn't really ever think about until I got to college. And late in the game too, like it was pretty recent. So that I think is one thing that I learned, just because I think I had surrounded myself here in this organization with people who pointed that out, and who held me accountable to that. And I think that that is an important lesson I learned, and that my organization kind of taught me and gave me. But from like, I guess, a leadership perspective, one thing that I've really learned this year is that when people are disengaged, sometimes it's not the organization, it's they're dealing with something, or they're living out, like in like the case that I've seen, they're living out the organization's mission in a different way, in a different space. And to me, that is so cool, because I would get mad. I'd be like, why aren't these people coming? Like, why are these people slacking? And turns out they're not slacking at all. They're just living out the organization's mission in another place. And that is super cool. And it can, if you really think about your organization's mission, how else can people live that out past, because that's the ultimate goal, right? Like, yes, be a part of this organization, but we also want that to reach that one. We want it to go beyond these 4 years that people might spend, or this 1 year that people might spend in our organization. So that's something that I've really learned this year, and it's something I'm so glad I did, because it takes the pressure off too, a little bit, because like I know that the members of my organization believe in what we're doing, even if they're not all the way in it, if that makes sense, in terms of engagement and participation.
Yeah, I think kind of a lesson I've learned in this is I can do it, which applies to everything. I didn't think I could start an organization. I did it. I never thought I would be a person to be calling state legislators. I can do it. And I never thought I'd be I didn't think that I would be able to join together and like join such a big mission that felt so much bigger than me, and to get other people in it. And I did it, and I can do it. And I think that's something that when you go and set out to do something, if it's something you're passionate about, you'll learn it and you'll do it. And that's what makes change happen. And it's learning new things, and overcoming that anxiety is really difficult. I know that it took me a very long time to do that, but when you do and you realize you see yourself making change And I think there's no such thing as small change. All change is change, and that's great. And being able to see that I can do that, I can make that change. And I think that that's something everyone can do if it's something you believe in and it's something you want to do. And I think that was a really big thing for me because I've always had a lot of doubt in myself. And just in this experience alone, I've seen like I can do something that's seems so much bigger than me and make that a part of my life.
So for me, I think one of the bigger lessons for me has been, I guess, just like leadership as a whole. I think like I was in leadership a bit in high school, but I feel like it wasn't nearly to the same level as the leadership that I've experienced or done here at Tech. I think sometimes I feel like leadership is talked about so vaguely, like in like, what is leadership? What does that mean? What does that look like? And it's kind of something that you can only learn through practice in a way. And I don't know, I feel like that's been important for me, especially I think learning to really pay attention to the needs of whatever members you have, or volunteers that like work below you technically, and really putting their wants and needs, like keeping those in mind when you're planning activities or planning meetings, to make things more enjoyable for everyone involved. Um, and then another thing I think for me has been, I guess, that like more people will be. It's sort of funny because I've talked about how I had limited turnout to my meetings, but at the same time, I feel like I've found a lot of support from people. Like if I mention my organization to people, people are usually pretty excited about it. People care about these issues. And I feel like from people at Tech as well have been supportive, just, I mean, in terms of going through like the registered student organization process. I also have talked to Dr. Brandy Faulkner, who's a professor here, about creating this organization, and she was really helpful for me. And so I think just knowing that there are going to be people who will support your organization's mission here at Tech, and then also just learning how leadership really works have been the two things that I've learned.
Cool. Thanks y'all so much for sharing. And I think those are very like empowering. I mean, obviously, like, usually lessons learned are kind of like optimism building, but I think those are all really like reflective of the empowerment that you can find in being able to, especially when you are working with something that is so connected to a passion and a commitment to values, that you can really feel kind of empowered to make a difference and empowered to lead others and things of that nature. So we'll finish up with our last question, and then I will give y'all a round of like, say the name of your org again, say where people can find you, etc. So our last question is like, how have you stayed motivated and involved during the pandemic, and through like a lot of virtual offerings? So what's kind of either like a strategy, or something like that that's helped you stay motivated?
I think personally, if I wasn't busy and like had all these things to do, then I would be handling this situation a whole lot worse than I have. Not saying that I've handled it well at all times, but I think it would have been very hard, if I didn't have the group of people that I have, if I hadn't like just dove right in and tried to, because when last semester was cut short, our organization stopped, and I was like, oh, wait a second, there's still service to be done. Like, I need something to do, otherwise I'm gonna lose my mind. Just because I didn't know what to do, which is part of the reason why I ran and am now in this position, is because I knew I wasn't the only one who needed something to be engaged in. And that was really my commitment, was just as a leader, how can I get the leadership chairs, how can I get members what they want this semester, even if it might look different than what they wanted in their head. But I've really seen that as my job, and that's kind of how I've stayed motivated, is because one of the chairs just got an event approved, and I have never seen her that excited about anything. So I think just knowing that I'm not the only one who needs to stay busy, to that, but also respecting that there are some people who are handling it differently, and can't handle all of the busyness in order to cope with everything that's going on. But I think that genuinely is how I've stayed motivated, just being in this position and kind of setting my purpose for this year, setting my goal for this year as being giving people what they want, and that's like how they want to stay connected. And I think so far I've been able to do that. Obviously not perfect. I could be doing way better. But I think that that's helped motivate me to stay active and engaged, is just, just setting those goals and that purpose, and, knowing that people need this right now, just like I need it. But yeah.
I think personally it was very difficult. I mean, this pandemic hasn't been easy on anyone or any student, but I remember when it got announced that the semester was going to be going virtual in March, and I was with my roommate, who's the vice president, and I remember it was one of the first things I brought up is I just turned to her and I said, how the heck are we going to deal with this? Because we had just become a new organization. And I was like, wait, what? um, and so, but luckily having such a strong support system with this, I mean, like I said, my roommate's the vice president, and I have a close friend from high school as well who's the treasurer. And so we had a really strong connection already. And so when we found out that things were going virtual and that things were going to be changing, I mean, we immediately were in connection about, what do we do? And it's been hard. I mean, especially because there's that big summer long period where I'm kind of thinking, not so much school, but kind of where everything else is. But um, it's always been child marriage is, like I said, it's a big thing. So I don't really take a break from trying to work on that. I actually spent my summer with an internship that actually, lobbying for a bill in New York that would have ended child marriage. And so having that strong support system, again, also my mother is my biggest supporter, and she's one of those ones, and she'll send you those long emotional texts about how proud she is of me, but those do really help me get through, and those motivate me. And this club really does mean a lot to her, and she tells me that. And so that also motivates me, seeing, this is making change into these people I know, and also knowing that child marriage increases in times of humanitarian crisis, including pandemics. And so that kind of makes this issue an even bigger issue right now. It makes it something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be brought up. This is making that situation worse. And so it's a negative thing, but that does motivate me. We need to change this. We need to do this. And knowing that it's getting worse, and maybe I can't fix it today, but I can start that movement, and we can start that movement as an organization. And, we can't be in person, but we can still do it virtually. And it motivates me knowing that this is something that needs to be done.
So for me, like when I came up with the idea for this organization, everything already had kind of been online. It was over the summer that I came up with this idea. I was kind of inspired by a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests that we were seeing. And I wanted to find ways that I could stay involved in doing anti-racism work, in educating myself, in reflecting on my own views of race and my own biases, my positions, and also taking actions. That was something I wanted to keep doing because I was involved in things over the summer and I wanted to continue that. And so that was kind of the motivation behind why I did that. And then in terms of like staying motivated, I think a lot of it just comes from just really feeling passionate about the topic, kind of like Abigail. Racial justice, I mean, race impacts like every single aspect of life for people. And I think over this summer, I've learned so many things that I didn't know before, and things that have kind of, I think, kind of shaped my, or made my, made me feel even more strongly about this subject and about caring about racist experiences that people have. Because before, I think I had like a general understanding of why racism is bad, how it impacts people, but not to the same extent. And I found myself wanting to talk to people about that and wanting to do more. And I really see Students for Racial Justice as an outlet for that. I wanted to meet people who similarly were feeling like this is a serious problem, but I don't know how to address it, and meet with them and try to address it in the best way we can. I mean, racism isn't going to be solved by my club, but we can take specific actions to educate ourselves on issues and actions to aid specific causes.
Awesome. Like I said, just a quick round of like, you know, what's the best place to to contact you, find information about your organization, stuff like that for folks. And then we'll also include that when we kind of like launch the videos, like we'll tag y'all on social media and all that jazz too. But feel free to just like do that, and we'll wrap up.
All right, yeah, so Instagram is the best place to find us, or on Gobbler Connect if you search Chi Delta Alpha. But our Instagram handle, I guess, I don't know, XDA_VT. That's where we post all of our upcoming events. You can DM us and we will add you to a listserv. But that's really the best way to find us.
All right, again, Students Against Child Marriage. Gobbler Connect is always my go-to. That kind of has everything listed, meeting times, and you can join anytime. But we do also have a Facebook, and we also have an Instagram. It's just Students Against Child Marriage. Blue logo, because there is another one that I believe has a butterfly on it. But we have a blue logo, and so that's where we post about events and everything, and you can DM us on there, and we can also help you with joining and things like that.
Okay, so Students for Racial Justice, you can find us on Gobbler Connect. That has my email, which is shaunak@vt.edu listed there. And then we also have an Instagram, which is sfrj_@_VT. So that's us.
Cool. Well, thank you all again for joining me this evening, and hope that folks learned some really valuable lessons and about some opportunities that exist on campus. Go ahead.